Well, welcome everyone to our webinar, Explore ReadLife Bookshelf, Multi-Generational Digital Reading Collection. I'm excited to be here with you today with my colleagues on this project. Again, as I said earlier, my name is Pam Cody. I'm with the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy, and we are so pleased to be co-sponsoring today with Worldreader. We were founded by Mrs. Bush, Mrs. Barbara Bush, and we will celebrate 35 years this March. We focus on adult and family literacy in different forms, and the tool we're going to talk about, ReadLife Bookshelf, is one piece of the work that we do. Our mission is driven by Mrs. Bush's belief that if we don't give everyone the ability to simply read and write, then we aren't giving everyone an equal chance to succeed. And when we think and talk about literacies, we think in terms of multiple literacies and all of the different ways that learners can connect to their learning as individuals to interact with themselves and also with the world. I will pass it to you, Kristen.
Sure, thank you. I'm Kristen Walter. I am the Director of U.S. Programs for Worldreader, and I'm currently sitting right outside of Chicago. With Worldreader, we actually started about 14 years ago in Ghana and then have expanded to Kenya, to India, Peru, and the United States about 3 years ago, which is very closely to when we started this partnership with the Barbara Bush Foundation. Our mission is just to get more children reading. We really believe that children who are readers grow up to be better educated adults, and really does expand their learning potential, and they're stronger, really grows their emotional intelligence. And the future is just bright when our children are reading. We do that through apps, books, data, capacity building, and you'll see all those great activities that we have paired with our books, and engagement. So we're excited to share that resource with you today through the Booksmart application.
So again, so excited to be here with you today. I'm the Senior Director of Curriculum and Training for the Foundation. I've spent about 20 years with direct classroom teaching. I taught upper elementary through adult learners and also managed a family literacy program for a chunk of time. And as we know, once a teacher, always a teacher. So to be able to spend my afternoon with colleagues in the field like you is really a wonderful way for me to end my day. I'm looking forward to exploring this resource with you and engaging in a conversation. I also want to introduce my colleague, Heather Brinkworth, who is an integral part of this work. She's going to be supporting in the background, dropping links that you can explore as we're chatting. And I'll pause so Heather can introduce herself as well.
Good afternoon and welcome everyone. My name is Heather Brinkworth. I am a Technical Program Director for the Barbara Bush Foundation, and I am so happy to be a collaborator on this project. We hope that you love ReadLife Bookshelf as much as we do and enjoy today's webinar.
Thank you. And I'm Kristen Walter. As I mentioned earlier, I'm the Director of Programs for Worldreader. I too have taught for a very long time, about 20 years, and have been in the education space for even longer than that. And like Pam, I think anytime you've had that classroom experience, everything you look through that classroom eye. So are tools being easy to use? Can teachers pick up and use them immediately? Can they adapt them to their specific need? And so one of the things that I'm most excited for you to see today is that it's a repository of tools that you can really adapt to your situation and what works best with your learners. So thank you for joining us today. One of the things that we're going to talk about, just actually these top 3 things that we're going to talk about today, is you are going to learn a little bit more about the Barbara Bush Foundation for Family Literacy and Worldreader. And we've shared some things with you, but you'll learn just a little bit more and why we're working together, what makes sense for these two organizations who very much have a love of literacy and helping people find their best reading selves come together for a tool. But we're going to explore the resources around the ReadLife Bookshelf, the teaching tool that we have for adult learners, children, and families. And you can really see that family literacy component coming here. And then one thing that I think is unique about this webinar is we really would like to hear your input on the current needs that you have in your situation, in your teaching situation, because we do like to look at how can we adapt our tools to best meet your needs. So that's something you don't often hear in a webinar, but we'd love to have that feedback from you today before we end. And that brings us to our polls. So we have 3 brief polls here in the beginning, just so that we can get to know you a little bit better in the audience and maybe tweak some of the things that we say to better serve you, but also so you can learn about each other. And so if you will just click on your screen, the first question is, how long have you been engaged in literacy? So the choices are 1 to 2 years, 3 to 4 years, more than 5 years. So if you'd submit your vote, more than 5 years. Wow, we have an experienced group here.
That's great.
I know it's still moving a little bit, and a lot of new teachers too. So that's are new to literacy, which is
Mhm.
exciting.
Mhm.
I always feel like we can learn from each other. And some of the best advice I've ever heard is that if you are above the age of 30, you need to find somebody that's below the age of 30 to be a mentor to you.
I love
So
that.
I do too. I really love this breakout we have. The second question. So the second question is, what is your current role in education? And the choices are administrator, pre-K-12 teacher, adult education instructor, technology director, or other. And if you didn't see the percentages in the last question, I would say we were a little more than 70% at the more than 5 years, and probably around 17 to 20 something percent at the 1 to 2
Mhm.
was that breakout. An instructional coach, great. I'm glad that you're putting those others in the chat. So
Mhm.
care providers, school librarian, curriculum managers, fantastic.
Mhm. Shout out to the middle school teachers. I spent 7 years in middle school.
Yeah, I started my career in middle school. I loved it. Loved it, loved it. And I would say with this, about 44% of us are other, 2% of us are technology directors, 6% adult education instructors, 40% pre-K-12 teachers, and 8% administrators. Great. And then, Diane, if you'll pull our third question up today, this is our last poll question for this section. And I love that we have so many providers, just such a wide range of educators here. So the third question is, how do you use digital texts with your learners? So the first option is to motivate and engage them during reading time, to support their reading instruction, to engage families in at-home reading and instruction, or reading and learning, all three of those, or you are new to using digital text with learners. So I always think this one's interesting too, because some of us are, we've not either needed to use digital text with our learners. We're looking for additional tools. So it's great to see that as well.
Mhm.
So I think 12% of us to motivate and engage, around 23% of us to support reading instruction, 6% to engage families, 29% of you are all three of those things above, and then 29% of us are new to using digital text with learners. So I love to hear that, because hopefully this is something you can put in your toolbox and use immediately after this session. So it's,
Mhm.
as far as digital texts go, it's a really light lift. So thank you for participating in this polls. Pam, I'm going to turn it back over to you.
Yes, thank you. That was great to see. It was nice to have that opportunity as a way to get to know you, and maybe your lens of how you joined us today or why you joined us today. So when I present teaching resources and tools from the foundation and tools like ReadLife Bookshelf, I always like to start with this quote. And it's true that I use it a lot when I'm talking about adult literacy, which is one of our focuses. But it also makes me think, just as a teacher, when we're working with our learners and our readers, that a beginner reader is not a beginner thinker, and kind of all the rich experiences they bring to their learning experiences. And it also lends to what we think about when we're creating at the Barbara Bush Foundation these resources. So we want them to be effective, relevant, and engaging. And so I like to kick off our presentations and our webinars talking about that to help kind of set the lens for our learning. And I also want to share this as well and encourage you, as you're learning about this resource, to think about how you can connect and apply what you learned today to your own practice, and then what can be integrated into your programming. And then also, if you look at number 2, the Foundation and Worldreader, we're very committed to this tool also being used for family literacy programming and to promote learners and families to be able to build that reading life and find joy in reading. And so we're going to talk a little bit about that today from the perspective of reading motivation and reading engagement, and we'll touch on instruction as well. So we came together to partner to create ReadLife Bookshelf about 2 years ago, although I think we were working on it a little longer than that. We just celebrated 1 year this past September, and we've been launching monthly collections since the summer of 2022. I know you'll be impressed with this resource, and one of the best things about it is it's free. And it's something that we've built together using Worldreader's BookSmart app. So at a very high level, before we launch into a live demo, which Kristen's going to be doing, is I want to talk a little bit about the collection you're going to see. So the ReadLife Bookshelf, it's a multi-generational collection. Excuse me, it focuses on adults, children, and family reading, and you will find that several texts in the collection are available in English and Spanish. We have a variety of texts and reading levels as well, and so you'll find fiction texts like mystery books, thrillers, realistic fiction, historical fiction, and then every month we share an informational text as well. I would say if we're thinking about reading level, ReadLife Bookshelf runs from about 7th through 7th grade. I'm using reading levels that way to kind of simplify our conversation. We'll talk a little bit more about text complexity and lexile levels later in the presentation. Each month, we launch 10 new books by a theme, and each book has guided activities to support that reading engagement. And we also launch an instructor guide each month to help you engage and bring some of the programming into your classroom and into your programming. Kristen will touch a little bit on the flexibility of this resource. It's very versatile for anytime, anywhere access across all platforms. And again, we like to think of it as a free library in your pocket. So I believe I am turning it back over to Kristen.
Sure. So as Pam mentioned, this is a completely free resource. When you share it with your families and with your instructors, all they need to do is either click the QR or click the link. And I think Heather's going to drop that in the chat, or you can type the link into your computer if you're sitting at a desktop right now, or just scan the QR code with your tablet or with your phone. And that takes you directly to the ReadLife Bookshelf. I'm just going to give you a moment to do that, and then I'll go to the next screen. If you just want to drop in the chat that you're on, that would be great too. But Heather has dropped the link in the chat. You can click on that, you can scan the QR code, or you can type that into your device. And at the end of the webinar in the coming days, Pam does have a follow-up email that we'll be sending that has a flyer and the link to this as well. So don't panic. If you are trying to take notes, you will have access to this after the webinar as well. I do like to point out that the books on that top shelf that you'll see that I'm going to show you in just a moment have 3 activities. So each of the books on the ReadLife Bookshelf has an embedded activity that is specific to that text. So there's always a reading champion activity. So something that is a conversation that an adult can have with another adult, with a child that you can have with a child in small group, but you're building a reading skill such as vocabulary, reading comprehension, or fluency. There's always an activity that has to do with growing positive emotions that really does help your readers explore their self-awareness and really learn empathy by what is happening in the book and in the story, and kind of gives you the opportunity to walk in someone else's shoes and really think about their perspective. And then as a former arts integration teacher, my favorite are the play-based activities, because you're doing something outside of the app and you're doing something with the text. So you're either extending it through an art activity, and maybe you're being a reporter, maybe you're playing a game, but it's still encouraging those oracy skills and that conversation around what you've read in the book itself. So I'll give you just another moment if you want to scan the QR code or click on the link. And I'm going to show you the app and walk you through that way you learn just some little shortcuts and unique things about the app, and we can really fast track your use of it. On the BookSmart application, you can search by using the search function in the top right. If you're on a phone, it will be the top left. We are going to do a little game after I show you the demo, and that search function is going to come in handy for you when we do that. You will select ages. So you can select ages 3 to 5, 6 to 8, 9 to 12, or adult reading. So if you only want to see those adult texts, you can click on that to just see those. And I'll show you how that works in just a moment. Or you can select the language. So you can choose books that are in English or books that are in Spanish. This is the top shelf that changes every month. So the first Monday of the month, this will align to the theme of the month. And so every month it changes to a new set of books. If I just take my cursor and I scroll to the left, it shows me all of the books that have been on this shelf for this month. And if I click more, it will show me all of the books for the past, all of the books actually that have ever been on this shelf. So I can keep scrolling down. If I go to the next page, it will show me more of those books. But I'd like to talk about the rhythm of the adult books and the children's books. So the first 4 books are those adult high-low content books. And you can tell they look just a little more sophisticated. And then the 6 books that follow are the children's books. And so then again, it starts that rhythm of 4 adult high-low content books and 6 children's books. There are always at least one of the adult books in Spanish, if not 2. And you can see this one, the texts are mirrored. We often will do that. So they're in Spanish and English. And the same thing for the children's books. There's always at least 1 or 2 children's books in Spanish here on this shelf every time. And these books always have those activities, those buckets of activities that I was showing you. If I click on Booksmart, it takes me back. And so if I want to read a book, I would click on the book itself. I can download the book to read offline. This is one thing I really love for our families if we're encouraging reading outside of our classroom time, because if a lot of our families are having to be cognizant about the data that they use, or if they're connected to the internet or Wi-Fi, so they can download a book to read on their device, even when they are not connected to the internet. So if you do have adult students during a specific and set time, you can say, hey, let's take time right now. Everybody download this to your device while you're connected to a Wi-Fi spot. And this is the book I'd like for you to read this week. So it just makes that access very easy. And if you want to share a specific text, you would click that button. And whether you're on a desktop or on your phone, whatever sharing mechanisms you have, whether it's email, text, social media, you can do that through your device. There's a description of the book. And then here are those activities. So I just want to show you what they look like very quickly. This one is the Growing Positive Emotions activity. It's talking about goal setting and how George Lucas didn't give up on his goal of making movies. And then share a lifelong goal you've achieved or hope to achieve with a friend or family member. Ask them about their goals and spark a conversation. This is the play-based activity. It's about building something. And this one is a drawing activity. Just really thinking about developing writing and literacy skills, and that drawing is an important part of that. So we're asking, again, our readers to do something outside of the app that's not digital. And then the reading champion activity, you can just see the example of this one, is a write it out activity. So after reading the book, choose one of George Lucas's achievements to write about in your own notebook or a piece of paper, and include why you chose this activity. So really thinking about what you've read in the text and then bringing it forward to write about and discuss. And then if I click read now, I can see the text there. And if you're a digital program, you can share your screen just like I'm doing. If you click on the picture, it will bring the picture really big for you. And you can see the text just sits right below the picture. If you are on a phone, if you hover above a word, a dictionary will pop up. So it will give you what that word means, which is something that's kind of exciting for a lot of our readers. And you can also change the font on a phone. I'm using the web version of the app, and it doesn't necessarily do all of those features on the web version, but it will on your portable device. And you can see I just go all the way through the book. For the sake of time, I am going to go to the end of this book. So just to show you that those activities are here again. And you can, again, share that book if you want. And the children's activities that are paired with the children's books are a little more child-friendly. These are a little more sophisticated. So again, just thinking about who your readers are and the best way to serve them. And then if you have a reader who has been reading on the top shelf, if that shelf rotates to the next month, their book will still be here. And then the other books on this shelf are the books that are popular amongst readers. Our new books, anytime we add a new book, it is here. We have a category that is science, math, and arts, preschool fun, rhyme and poetry, friendship, tales and adventure, my best self, sports and health, social studies, learning to read, and then finally laughing giggles. And then at the bottom of the application, it's my books and it's favorites if you're on a cell device. If I click on my books, it will show me the books I have in progress, the books that I've finished. They have a little green check mark, and the books that I've downloaded to read offline. And then I just want to show you if you say you just wanted preschool books, you would hit 3 to 5. If you are an adult literacy instructor or family literacy instructor, if you want just the adult books, they will show up here. And again, if you click more while you have that filter set, show you all of those.
Can I pop in on this part, Kristen, on the adult literacy text? So we are really proud of this part of our collection. So I noticed that there were a few adult educators when we did the poll. And so one thing I want to point out is we were very deliberate in curating this collection. We worked with specific publishers for those high interest, low vocabulary books. We thought about relevant topics for adults. And then we also went so far as to co-commission Tax Worldreader and the Foundation. So some of those books are Paul and Gabriella Go to Seville. That is one of those co-commissioned texts. And what I love about the adult learner text as well is many of the topics in the books are perfect for those family literacy conversations. So those conversations you want to promote with parents. So as a former adult educator and family literacy programmer, I always like to jump in and point that out with that part of the collection.
Absolutely. And all of the books are, even the adult books are very appropriate. If a child were to stumble into a book, we've made sure everything is very G-rated. But it's a text that has just a little more sophistication, and it might grab an adult in a way that, like Safari Animals might not, which is still a wonderful and lovely book. But we just wanted to make sure, as Pam said, that we were having books that really served that need. And I'm going to skip to our next part, which is going to be a scavenger hunt. And Pam, do you want to talk about the scavenger hunt and the prize that you have before we jump into it?
Sure, I sure can. We have one question before we go into that. The question is, are these books selected from the Accelerator Reader program? And I'm going to let you answer that for your whole collection.
Absolutely. And I also saw one about audiobooks. So the audiobook and text-to-speech will work if you're on an Android device or if you're on an Android device. It's not coded yet for iOS. So you wanted to address that. But also the books are from a really wide variety of publishers. Because we started globally, we have access to publishers in Africa and India that you might not see in other collections. So you might not see all of the books that you would find, like all the Percy Jackson books. Those types of books that are super popular are not necessarily in the application. But these books are not necessarily aligned to the Accelerated Reader program. They are aligned to the Lexile levels, which Pam is going to show you in the resource guide. And we have a little description beside each book in the app, in A through G description, just again, because we're international, that is more a descriptor of that book versus aligning to Fountas and Pinnell or something like that.
Thanks, Kristen. So we're excited to do this scavenger hunt with you today because we have prizes. So even though this is a virtual webinar, we have prizes for you. So Kristen has 3 questions. We're going to take them one by one. And the first person to answer the question correctly, Heather will drop some information in the chat. And you're going to send your address and your content information and how many bookmarks you might like for your program. So this is a ReadLife Bookshelf bookmark. One side has Mrs. Bush's reading tips. The other side has some easy information about the collection and a QR code to access it. You can see they're kind of little oversized bookmarks, and we're going to be happy to ship those off to you. So everyone get ready for our scavenger hunt.
Absolutely. And so one of the reasons I like a scavenger hunt is because it gives a person an authentic way to interact with the technology without you saying, do you understand it? Because the answer is always going to be yes, or I don't have any questions. But I highly recommend doing a scavenger hunt with any new technology you introduce to teachers or you introduce to families, just to give them a way to interact with the technology while you are there to answer questions. And it helps you gauge their understanding of how to use the application. So if you'll drop your answer in the chat, and Heather's going to be monitoring that, and Pam's got the bookmarks ready to go. And the first question is, what is on the front cover of the book, The Music in the World? So remember, you have that search function. You can type in the music in the world. You can type in music. But what is on the front cover of the book? Oh, a tree. We have several answers there.
That is, I think Kate Adams came in correct.
Pamela was
first, rather.
Yeah, too bad we have the 10th of the second. Pamela was a very quick second there. Okay, the next question is,
I think Kate and Pamela tied, and I think we should send them both bookmark sets. So Kate and Pamela, if you could please drop that information. It was so close. You're right.
It was. All right, what is the post reading, the play-based activity in the News for You, Man Makes a Splash 365 days in a row? So what is that play-based activity in the book News for You, Man Makes a Splash 365 days in a row?
I think that was Ryan. Is that what you're seeing, Kristen?
Yeah. Be the Reporter, Ryan. Paula was really close on that too. They're both within 328.
Okay, so we will go with Paula and Ryan and Kate and Pamela. I'm sorry, you're getting bookmarks from the first time. We won't double up on that. Great job, everyone.
All right, and then the last question. This is one of my favorite books, and this is one of the first books I found when coming to WorldReader. But it is Who is Nita's Friend, and Why is Nita Upside Down? So what is the name of Nita's friend in the book? Why is Nita Upside Down?
I love this book. It's one of my favorite books.
We had a question earlier if this is more for adults or children, and I would very much say both. It's a great family source. So if you have adults who need a little more support with their reading, or if you're an adult literacy instructor, but also it's, there's lots of children's books there as well. Okay, so what is the name of Nita's friend, and why is Nita upside down? Navi, Rebecca got that.
Okay, wonderful, Rebecca.
All right.
Okay, and did you say the question came in about the collection as a whole? The audience for the collection as a whole?
Yes, if it was just before, if it was for adults and children.
Okay, so it truly is a mix, and I think you'll see that as we go into the instructor guides, and I talk a little bit about that portion of it a little bit more. Think about the collection sitting on the bookshelf, that there are books for children, there are books for families to read together, and there are books for adult learners. And we know that one of the things we want to do when we're working with our learners is make that home connection to parents and caregivers. So this is a tool that promotes all of that.
Absolutely. And one of the, I like to be very explicit about this. Again, if we say things really clearly, they're heard best. Because this is a digital tool that you have on your phone, your readers will have on their phone, really helping them to think about reading behaviors and what they're doing with their devices. I'm pretty sure cell phones are here to stay, but really helping them think about replacement behaviors. So identifying where they are already using their phone throughout the day. Is it on the bus? Is it public transportation? Laundromat, doing hair, waiting on another child to finish practice. But really identifying where are you already using your phone, and not telling people to not use a device, but to, instead of watching a video for 20 minutes or instead of playing a game with your child for 20 minutes, replace 10 minutes of that time with reading and then go on to do those other activities. So I think being very explicit about helping your learners identify the times during the day when they're having a non-reading activity with their device, which now has over 1,000 books on it, replacing some of that time throughout the day with a reading behavior. So I just always like to point that out, that if you are new to a digital program, that's a really unique thing about digital, is that you always have a book on you, and really think about where you are during the day and how you can replace that with a reading behavior. And then just the things that, again, most work with a digital program like this is those replacement behaviors, sharing books directly, doing a very specific call to action with your readers and your learners, and then helping them set goals. So maybe it's that, while I'm waiting on the bus 3 times this week, I'm going to read a book, or I'm going to read 2 pages of my book. And then asking them about it when you see them, but really thinking about that reading anywhere, anytime aspect of access that then is text.
Great. Thank you, Kristen. So I'm going to jump in right now and I'm going to talk about the instructor guides that are available for this collection. And Heather is going to drop the link to our Learning Resource Center. And I'm going to actually try to go live in a minute to show you that, but you can start exploring on your own as well. So each month we share a theme-based instructor guide, and the guide provides starting points for short activities, lessons, possibly larger units, or learning experiences. The guides do not provide a lesson-by-lesson curriculum. They are a resource to support sparking some ideas about how you could use the text in your collection. And so while you'll note that, because again, we are an adult and family literacy foundation, that the guides, sometimes we use language for teaching adult learners, you'll see that we pull from a lot of K-12 resources. And like all good teachers do, you have the flexibility to modify and use any activities that work best for you. So on the Learning Resource Center, if you scroll down, you'll see that we offer some resources, but the current collection is always in this top spot. This Go to Bookshelf will bring you to the BookSmart app and to the ReadLife Bookshelf collection. And then if you scroll down even further, you can see past bookshelves as well. So I'm going to click on our instructor resource guide for faraway places and just show you a couple things in here. We kick off all of these instructor resource guides with the suggestions for using the collection and activities. And then this is where you can find the books as a whole for that collection, and also the Lexile levels that we mentioned. And so just a point on that, we know that determining text complexity, that this is just one tool for this. It provides this quantitative measure. So you'll want to consider, qualitative, text structure, meaning, reader task, and all of those other things we think about as learners. This is just one starting point for you. If you scroll through to the bottom of the instructor guide, you'll see the different sections for activities to support instruction. We have online resources to support instructors. I'm going to take you through an activity in one of our guides, suggestions for using the collection and activities with families. And then we have expanded lesson for educators. And again, these usually pull from an adult learner text, but you can think about using the components that work best for you. I'm going to go back to the main page, and I want to briefly explore the past bookshelves just to explain something to you. You can see all of the different themes that we've launched since summer of 2022. And I'm going to click on the April one because we're going to be showing you an activity in here. But I just wanted to point something out. If you're going through the different themes and you're thinking about, I wonder what books they had on that bookshelf for awakening creativity. If you go to the instructor guide, that's where you can see the collection of books that originally sat on that bookshelf, because of course, when we launch a new bookshelf, those books just go into the collection, and then these are all linked so you can go directly to the books. So in the April instructor guide for awakening creativity, you have that link. So if you want to look at that, you can as well. In the section activities to support instruction, there's one little paragraph on text graffiti. And the reason I like to point this out is it shows you how we highlight some activities that we think would be engaging for that particular collection, and we link directly to the source. So this graffiti activity, we all know as teachers, there are several different ways you can use graffiti in the classroom, but this particular one, the source is from Learning for Justice, and you can see kind of the activity outlined on the screen. And some information on this. This is a great activity for building collaboration. It taps into a learner's prior knowledge, and it supports work around predicting skills. So I'm going to show you an example of this that Kristen and I have actually done this for an in-person workshop as well as a virtual one. So the idea is that you select a text, and the text that we selected is The Music in the World, which was actually part of our scavenger hunt, and Heather will drop the link to the book. Now, if you were doing this activity, you would not share the text first with your learners because you're obviously doing a predicting activity. But for the sake of me sharing what an activity could look like, we're doing that today. So the idea is that you go in and you select anywhere from, I would say, 5 to 7 to 8 pieces of text that you are going to chart, either if it's virtual, and you can do this through a Jamboard or another online tool, or by charting on paper, and you can do it either in person or virtual gallery walk. And the goal of this is to have learners react to those pieces of text. So you're asking them to comment directly on the paper and to be explicit in their thoughts. And you want them to be thinking about if they're having an emotional reaction, if they have a question, and encouraging them to go back to see what everyone else is commenting so that they can build ideas and they can collaborate. And then this works very well, again, to chart some predictions about the text. And then you can close out the activity after you read the text together by looping this back in and kind of closing the loop on this. And so I'll give you an example from a webinar that we did last fall. This was a virtual webinar, and you can see this is one piece of text from the book, The Music in the World. Oh, don't ask your mother for help with writing. She's no good at that. Remember how hard that was for you, Nyla. You weren't very creative. Pops spoke up. And you can see that this really elicited an emotional reaction for a lot of people. This particular text is a great example of a book which is in our adult learner collection, but it makes a great book for family literacy as well and promoting the family conversations. So that's an example of how you can pull an activity from an instructor resource guide for instruction and, of course, modify it how you would like to modify it. So we're going to continue the conversation. We have talked over the past half hour or so as we've shared ReadLife Bookshelf and have tried to focus on reading engagement and reading motivation. And we also want you to see how this collection can be used for reading instruction. So just like, just like you pull a book from a bookshelf in your classroom, or you might have a mentor text, or you've selected an excerpt for an activity you're going to do with your learners and you're going to read it to them, or you're going to have them read it, we encourage you to think about ReadLife Bookshelf, that it can be used in that way as well. And so I'm going to give you a few examples that are going to be very high level, just to kind of touch on how the collection can be used. So the first one I'm going to talk about is fluency instruction. I thought this would be interesting to talk about today. So fluency is, of course, reading with accuracy, automaticity, and prosody. And when we read fluently, our brain can engage in higher order thinking, and we're able to focus on meaning and vocabulary and contextual understanding. So I was thinking about the fluency intervention, repeated reading, and I thought, could any of the books from ReadLife Bookshelf or the excerpts be used for this type of reading intervention? And I was thinking about it as far as also paired reading, shared reading, and sending books home for families to read together. And I think we showed, Kristen, I can't remember when you were doing the demo, the way that you can share the book. You can email it to a family or home with a student. And so I would encourage you to think about if you engage in fluency activities or fluency interventions, how you could incorporate ReadLife Bookshelf into those activities. Remember that the power of shared reading, especially through performance like Reader's Theater, is a really powerful way to explore fluency instruction or engaging in reading. And it's a fun way for students. And while we don't have Reader's Theater's scripts in ReadLife Bookshelf, we do have books that very easily could be converted into them or portions of them. And so I think that these make a great, that there are some texts in the collection that would be great for this type of activity. I'm going to go ahead and talk about our informational texts. And I did see earlier in the chat, someone had mentioned actually this book that I'm viewing, the unicorn book. LA County gives little girl the okay to own a unicorn if she finds one. So this is purely a Pam Cody activity. I had mentioned I used to be a teacher, and I was thinking about our informational texts. They have a wide span of reading levels for these texts. And I came up with the activity on the screen because if you've clicked through them, you'll notice that they don't have text features. So one thing you could do is create a scaffolded activity with your learners where you're exploring different types of text features. This can be a very collaborative activity. I had mentioned multi-literacies earlier in the presentation, so this is also a way to connect with learners around speaking and listening skills and tap into those other types of literacies. And it's also a way, if you're doing an activity like this where you're exploring text features, to extend that learning to home for at-home conversations. These short informational texts are really perfect for shared reading and promoting conversation around informational topics. And sometimes it's hard as parents and caregivers to find those shorter informational texts for those conversations. So I encourage you to view those as well. As Kristen mentioned earlier, we launch a new informational text every month in the collection, and they are always available in English and in Spanish. And then the last very high level I'm going to talk about is background knowledge, which, as we know, plays a critical role in reading comprehension, and it allows our readers to connect with multiple meanings of words and really supports inferencing when reading. So I know that there could be a whole webinar on background knowledge, and so I'm going to be very high level today. But I like to talk about this with this collection because a few slides back, I had mentioned the Lexile levels, and I had talked about text complexity. And so when we're thinking about text complexity, it's so important to remember those reader task variables of who are my students, what is their background knowledge, and that when someone is engaging in reading, you have a reader, you have a text, you might have a task if it's connected to something other than reading for pleasure, and then you kind of have the context that it falls in. And so when we're thinking about text complexity, sometimes as teachers, if we have a complex task, we're looking for a text that might be less complex. That's a bit of a tongue twister. But the collection gives you the opportunity to kind of think about that. I have a really complex task that I want to explore with my learners. Are some of these shorter chapter books appropriate to support that learning? And then another piece to kind of think about is earlier in the presentation when I shared the quote on a beginner reader is not a beginner thinker, and I kind of pushed us to think about the rich experience of our learners. This goes into understanding a learner's funds of knowledge. So what do they know? What are they taking away from the conversation? This is so important to understand a family's funds of knowledge as well, their cultural practices, their daily practices and routines of families. And so you're thinking about how can you build their schema to help support their learning. And we know that with background knowledge that's particularly important with our English language learners. And then I also like to point out, and I'm not sure, I'm going to be honest, I always thought about this as a teacher, how important it is to understand our own funds of knowledge. And remember that we are part of that learning equation. And so when we're designing and delivering instruction, it's really important that we're aware of that, and that's part of the conversation with our learners. And then lastly, we want to attach new learning to past experiences. So we're thinking about how we can promote that learner's ability to combine familiar knowledge with new knowledge. So why am I talking about background knowledge with ReadLife Bookshelf? Well, it's because I feel we offer a wide array of texts, not just through the ReadLife Bookshelf collection, but because you have the opportunity to access the vast collection that Worldreader has on their BookSmart app. And so I think that really promotes this conversation as well. So over those last 3 slides, when I was talking about reading instruction, I was connecting to fluency in informational text and background knowledge. I was trying to also have the thread go through of family literacy, because we are a family literacy foundation, and this is what we know about the research. We know that children do better in school when families are involved, and that family engagement has the most impact when connected to learning. So when you're thinking about ReadLife Bookshelf, and we had that question earlier of who is the audience, I would really encourage you to think about this tool to connect to families. It is a powerful tool for that. And all of us as teachers, we just know how important the parent and the caregiver, how important it is to have them as part of the learning team. That's kind of how I used to think about it with my learners. So if you have parent nights, depending on your conference format. If you're able to send text home with your students, can you use any of these books to tap into an interesting way to practice reading for fluency? It's not just about read, it's that joy of reading, to explore informational topics and then to help your learners develop their schema and build their background knowledge. And then most importantly, to support them building a reading life so that they persist as readers. So we're getting ready to wrap up and dig into answering your questions that you may have. And before we do that, we're going to close out with one poll. So we're curious, as you approach summer planning, we're meeting in January, and so we know that you're starting to think about that. What curriculum and resources do you currently have in place for summer programming? And so we're curious to see this. We have, let's see, we have about no one so far sourcing their own school materials. Oops, we just had some populate. We seem to have the highest percentage so far of we do not have a summer school curriculum in place. And then 18% we have a dedicated curriculum for summer learning. So I would encourage you, as you move into your planning, to think about ReadLife Bookshelf and really think about how this is a free resource. We want you to use it. We're excited for you to use it and to reach out to us so we can support you with that. And it looks like there's still a couple just coming in, but we landed with our highest percentage at not having school curriculum in place. Okay, thanks for sharing that information with us. And I'm going to close the poll. And we're populating the screen one last time, just in case you joined us a little late, so you have access to the QR code for the ReadLife Bookshelf collection, as well as the link. And then in the blue side panel, that's the QR code for the Learning Resource Center. And one of the reasons we're sharing this is Kristen and I sometimes do more expanded trainings with specific sites. So if ReadLife Bookshelf, if you're thinking this has really resonated with me, I think this is something we can use in programming, we're happy to do something that's a little more one-on-one to talk about integration, but we encourage you to keep exploring and coming back with those questions as well. And we are going to move into questions and answers now. See if we have any.
We have a few. Yeah.
Okay, let's see.
Yeah. One of them is about, we answered the one about audiobooks, but one of them is about being able to select above age 12. And I just want to point out, if yours does not show in the drop-down menu, if it does not show adults as an option, make sure you're in the Barbara Bush Foundation collection, which I just dropped again, and the ReadLife Bookshelf collection. That's what has access to those at the top shelf. That's why it has access to those adult books as well. So just make sure that if you go into settings, it should show that you're in the right collection, but just make sure you're clicking on that link. I just want to point it out, if it doesn't show above age 12 for you, make sure you're using this link instead. And if you have questions, just email me. I can drop my email in the chat. And actually, I think Heather's dropped it there. If you have any technical questions, feel free to reach out to me.
Going through, do you want to answer the one on the different languages, Kristen?
Sure. Absolutely. So this collection is in Spanish and in English. We do have the option for very discrete programs to add Arabic. We don't have French, but there are a few Arabic books that can be added at some point. It's I think a larger conversation. So I just always like to point out that there is always a possibility to do that. But right now, this collection is in Spanish and in English.
Okay. I think the next one was, does the collection have decodable books? So if I skipped one above that, Kristen, just let me know after. So for ReadLife Bookshelf, we focus on authentic text for that. I'm not sure in the overall collection if on some of the other bookshelves that they have access to that you have decodable books.
There are, and if you are in the search function and you search reading teacher, there is a set of decodable books that will come up. There's 2 units of those. The first couple of books are just in black and white, and then the second unit goes into color, but there are decodable text if you need those there.
Okay. And just looking to the chat, someone's listening on the phone is saying, where's the QR code? So if you're not able to access it right now, we will be sending a follow-up email with all the links either tomorrow or Friday. Is there anywhere we can go to see a list of digital texts that are available? As far as the ReadLife Bookshelf collection, they're listed by theme as an instructor resource guide. We don't have a master list for ReadLife Bookshelf. I can't answer that question for the whole collection, so I'll turn that back to you, Kristen.
Sure. So there's not necessarily a place to go to find every book in there, and we are updating the books. I would say monthly. We add new books. If there's a book that's not doing well, or we get feedback that it's not a great fit, sometimes we'll take that book out, or if it just ages out of the collection. So there's not a set list. I would say the closest thing to a list would be to go to the Learning Resource Center and click on those resource guides and find the list of books there. And then someone said they couldn't find the reading teacher books. If you just go into the search function, so that little, I don't know, it's like a looking glass on either the top right or the top left, and type that in, those should come up. And how many books on average? There are more than 1,000 books on the application. So it's a lot of.
Might need to clarify this question. Becky is not sure where to search. Sounds like she's a reading teacher. Am I in the right collection? You didn't just answer that one, did you?
I think I did, but I can.
Sorry, I'm flipping back and forth.
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
User need to sign up or sign in, not after the first time, correct? Do you want to run them through that?
Sure, absolutely. So the first time, if they sign in, it will keep their information for them so that they can, if they're reading books on multiple devices, those books will go with them. We actually do encourage a sign in. That way, if there's ever any updates, it just always keeps you it keeps your books with you. We follow very strict data privacy policies, which are on our website. We anonymize all of the data. It's why, if a program leader is looking at data, like Pam, it doesn't show her who is reading, but it shows her that there, maybe 300 devices reading. But we follow all of our data is very anonymized.
And not a question, I just want to comment, Ryan had commented that he's going to be using the collection to promote reading and questioning skills for my high school science class. So I love that. That's wonderful. Thank you for sharing that.
Yeah, there's a STEAM series on there, which follows a design thinking process, which would be great for that. So if you search STEAM, those books will come up.
Okay. We have a question, how many books on average? I'm not sure if it's how many we launch a month, but for ReadLife Bookshelf, we have 10 new books, mix of English and Spanish every month, and then around over 1,000, correct, in the full collection? Okay. Yes, there are adult books for ESL adults. So when you are on the ReadLife Bookshelf collection, the first 3 to 4 books are always adult learner texts. And usually the fiction text will also be offered in Spanish. The informational text always is. It's pretty rare that it's not. We did do that a couple months ago. I think it was December. There's a great book, Mr. Reed Lives for a Day, and it ends on a cliffhanger. And so we had to put the second book in right away. So we'll populate those in the future in Spanish. There are not tags to sort by the theme at this time. So again, if you're interested in the theme collection, the best place to source those is through the Learning Resource Center link. And we can drop that again, which I think Heather just did. Oh no, Heather is dropping the flyers for us. Thank you, Heather. So these flyers are going to be in the follow-up email, but if you click on those, they're in English and Spanish. They're printable. They're really easy to post in a library, in a classroom, in a school, in a community organization center. So we encourage you to look at those. Our contact information again. I know I speak for Kristen that I am truly sincere. We love to hear from people. So if you're using ReadLife Bookshelf, this is a free resource. We want to continue to maintain this free resource. So we need to know that you're using it. So please share it with your learners. Send us questions. Send us pictures using it, quotes from you or learners. We want to know all about the work you're doing with ReadLife Bookshelf.
Absolutely. And thank you for attending today. Happy reading.
Thank you. And I think we have, let me just check questions one more time. I think we're good. All right. Thank you so much. It's been wonderful spending the afternoon with you. Stay well. And thank you for all the great work you're doing with our readers and learners.